Okay, my outstanding friends, this is going to be a trip from day one until today. Day one means what? Well, the beginning of the universe, or the beginning of our solar system, or the beginning of our existence here on planet Earth. And we're going to start with Genesis. And the way I'm going to do this, I have now pretty much studied bits and pieces of most all the ancient religions. Most. However, I am not proficient at any of them, to be perfectly honest. I am in the learning phase. And I find things that don't make sense, especially when you put a bunch of different perspectives on it. The Greeks versus the Egyptians versus the Christians and all the, the Jews and the whole nine yards. And then you get into Apollodorus and Ovid and Hesiod and all about Zeus, and Apollodorus is the one. But I found something in there about Typhon in the desert, and I can verify that's just a fact. And I have found several facts in different texts here and there that we have to discuss. And I found things that I believe are not true in pretty much all the other, in the texts as well, in pretty much all of them. I really don't know at this point. Like I say, this is just brand new. I'm just getting started, and we're going to try to lay out a timeline from when there was chaos. All right, there was nothing. The earth was void. Let's get started. Okay, my friends, I'm not even going to go over Typhon at all, other than to say, here he is right here. That's his head. There's his flared, flashing eye. There's his throat. It runs all the way down, and his throat was cut right here with a great and mighty sword. He bled out in the desert. He runs all the way across North Africa, from here to there at the tip of his tail. And he's attacking a gigantic fish. And let me read you the text that talk about this event. All right, this is beyond incredible, but you just saw Typhon in the desert. Now, this is about when the gods fought against the giants, and they killed all the giants. Those were the children of Earth. Earth gave birth to the giants. So now she was mad. She was enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus, and brought forth Typhon, who is this gigantic monster. It was a hybrid between man and beast. The only thing it had was the thighs of a human. Look, in size and strength, it surpassed all the offsprings of Earth. As far as his thighs go, he was of human shape, and of such prodigious bulk, he out-topped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. And then it goes on and on. The only thing that I want to talk to you about is his red flaring eye. You can see all this stuff. Fire flashed from his eyes. Such and so great was Typhon when hurling kindled rocks he made for the very heavens after the gods, hissing in shouts, spouting a great jet of fire, which you can see. The gods saw him rushing at heaven. They made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. Zeus pelted Typhon at a distance and cut his throat and all that stuff. So that's why I have to take this into account as having validity. And this is Apollodorus' library. Apollodorus, and he was in the 2nd century BC, but he compiled all the works from prior to him, primarily Hesiod. All right, basically we're going to divide everything prior to the Great Flood, which was the intervention of God to wipe out the wicked and all these giants and so forth. So that's pre-flood. Then there's going to be after the flood. Now, this is the Theogony. I just mentioned Hesiod, and this is what he wrote. And he was, I think this is going to detail it pretty good. I'm just going to read it for a minute or two. All right, this Theogony details the genealogy of ancient Greek gods. This is right from the beginning of the universe. through the Olympian gods and the monsters, various monsters and heroes descended from them. They were all descendants of the beginning of the universe. The poem begins with an invocation to the Muses, which are the daughters of Zeus. Typical of epic poetry, they do an invocation. Now, but it had a twist. Hesiod claims the Muses themselves, the 9 daughters of Zeus, descended to visit him on Mount Helicon, I believe it was, and taught him fine singing. And they also gave him a rod, a magical rod to write, and he wrote like crazy, all of the history of everything. So Hesiod then describes the origins of the Muses and describes their benefits to men who gained their favor, including good judgment, beautiful speech, reverence from peers. All right? The poem goes on to describe the beginning of the universe, the chasm, Earth. How did Earth come into being? Followed by Tartarus, Eros. Eros is to act as the implicit guiding force behind much of the rest of the poem, which focuses on successive generations of gods, goddesses being conceived and born. All right, and these were all gods, and apparently they're immortal, as far as I can tell. All right, so Hesiod talks about the chasm, right? Remember here? The poem describes the beginning of the universe, which is the chasm. Well, what is a chasm? It's chaos. All they do is say, well, it's just something that happened, and then everything else followed after that. Well, the chasm was chaos. And that's in the Bible, same thing. It says in the beginning there was chaos. And basically this is the same thing in Apollodorus. Now, so you have the chaos, and then the earth comes from that, followed by Tartarus and Eros. Well, who's Eros? Eros is one of the first divinities to come into existence. While he takes part in little of the action explicitly in the poem, he is implicitly the motivating factor behind many of the events. All right, this is extremely critical to understand this, which I had never understood. The beginning of the universe, okay, we're starting right from the beginning. First is the chaos. It's just everything is like God threw a whole batch of matter into this solar system, and it's just chaos. And then it's forming into the different planets, which end up being gods. Earth is a planet and a god, and at the same time they followed right by Tartarus and Eros. Well, they don't give a good explanation of them. Let me give you a better explanation of what Eros is. It's the Greek god of erotic love. And compare Cupid, the sum of life-preserving instincts that are manifested as impulses to gratify basic needs, as sublimated impulses, and as impulses to protect and preserve the body and mind. Compare death instinct. And mind, I don't know, that doesn't make much sense to me, but what it is they're talking about erotic love. Well, that did happen. That's what happened, was the angels that were put in charge saw women as very, very attractive, and they had this eros built into them, it appears to me. And this is in the first days, the first instance of time as well. Tartarus was created, and it's a deep abyss that's used as a dungeon of torment and suffering for the wicked, and as the prison for the Titans. Now, the Titans were consumed. Let's start. All right, my friends, and this is Tartarus, which is a deep abyss, and is used as a dungeon of torment and suffering for the wicked, and as the prison for the Titans. Everybody's heard of Titus. I associate it to hell. I don't know We're going to talk about that. And I just want you to know, this is going to be a ramble. I'm just learning. So this is how I go about learning stuff. I read through things and I make sure I understand it as I go along. Because most people read through things, they don't understand even what they're reading. And they're just picking up a little piece here and there. I like to have the details and understand it, as close as I can understand it. And then I like to relate it to everybody else's statements. All right, because we're talking about the Greek now. All right, so here's the Greek. And the Greek is Hesiod, the Theogony. And that's 800 BC. He was the first one, literally, after the flood, to write about this stuff. And they went down into Medusa and Hercules and Prometheus, and he could go all the way down. And then you get down to Typhon, who's the one I just showed you. And Zeus does battle with him, eventually obliterating him entirely. Zeus has other children. Zeus was a sex addict, and he was the god of this solar system. That's the way I see it. That's the way the Greek presents it. Now, this is another one that's absolutely fabulous. This is Ovid, O-V-I-D. He wrote Metamorphosis. And he wrote it right at the time of Julius Caesar, about 8 in a common era. Now, and it was absolutely fabulous. He comprised 250 myths. All right, and we call them myths. They were stories into 15 books and all of this stuff. And he wrote what was written in the past by every culture. And he took 15 books he wrote. Now, these are all the books he wrote. And he started right off at the beginning, too. The creation. How did everything get created? The ages of mankind. Then came the flood. Then came Deucalion, who was Noah, and his wife. They floated off. And then you got Apollo, Daphne, you got all the Jupiter, Europa, all of these. It's crazy, but one of the main things he talks about is this. Metamorphosis means transformation. Like a chrysalis, a cocoon turned into a butterfly. Well, it's a unifying theme amongst the episodes of Metamorphosis, and there's 15 books now. Ovid raises its significance explicitly in the opening lines of the poem, which means his book. And here's his words. In nova fert animus mutatus desere formos corpora. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities, in quotations. I intend to speak of forms changed into new entities. Well, what forms? He says, accompanying this theme is often violence inflicted upon a victim. That's the form, whose transformation becomes part of the natural landscape. All right, they were turning people into statues and everything else just for fun. And they still, the statues, I found statues, there's no question, there was creatures inside them, absolutely no question whatsoever. And they can be very easily tested. So, listen to this. Here's what they could transform things into. And here's what happened. These were gods. But they could transform themselves into anything. Look what they could do. A great variety among the types of transformations take place, from human into inanimate objects like the Nile River or a constellation or an animal or a plant, or from an animal to fungus like ants or fungus into mushrooms into humans, from one sex to another. They could change their sexes, from one color to another. The metamorphoses themselves are often located metatextually. They think he was just kidding. No, they could do that. And what happened was the gods being literally planets. Zeus was Jupiter. Zeus is Jupiter. And he changed himself into a human being, come down and set up shop up on, I think it was Mount Olympus. I think maybe it was Mount Olympus. Anyway, he came down and set up a pleasure palace there to come down and have sex with the women. And it appears to me that he's the one that they wrote about, saying, well, we'll all sign mutual imprecation that we're going to do this. The two of them came down and started to have sex with the women, and that's when they had the giants. So I would say Zeus was that god that turned against the god, apparently. That's the only way I can think of it. Like I say, this is kind of a ramble. All right, this again is kind of crazy, but this is what was written in the Bible. It says, the earth, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. That's kind of vague. And it says, and the earth was without form, which is chaos, and it was void. There was nothing growing or living on here, apparently. And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. All right, so let's see what it says in Apollodorus about that beginning. Okay, this is outrageous. Sky was the first who ruled over the whole world. He was called Uranus. And having wedded earth, he begat these monsters, 100-handed. They had 100 hands, 50 heads. After these, earth bore the Cyclopses. And what happened was Uranus cast them into Tartarus because they were monsters. He didn't want them around. And then after that, he begat children by the earth, which were the Titans. And this was the ocean, Hyperion, all these, Iapetus, the youngest of all, Kronos, his daughters, the Titanides, they're called. Now, earth grieved at the destruction of her children, these monsters that were down in Tartarus, who had been cast into Tartarus, and persuaded the Titans, who apparently were not in Tartarus, they were on the earth, to attack their father, and gave Kronos an adamantine sickle. Now, Kronos was the youngest of all, was Kronos. Now, Kronos cut off his father's genitals and threw them into the ocean, and from that, the Furies were born. And having dethroned their father, they brought up their brethren who had been hurled down to Tartarus. So he brought them all back up again and committed the sovereignty to Kronos. So now Kronos is the new king. Uranus has been dethroned. But again, bound and shot them up in Tartarus. So he took all of them and shut them all up in Tartarus and wedded his own sister. And since both earth and sky foretold him that he would be dethroned by his own son, he used to swallow his offspring at birth. All right, so he would swallow them. His firstborn he swallowed, then Demeter, then Hera, and after them Pluto and Poseidon and so forth. Enraged at this, Rhea hid out in Crete and had a baby who was Zeus, and hid it from Kronos, so he wouldn't eat it. Now, this rings to something like this in Revelations, with the woman giving birth on the moon, and the giant red dragon swooping in to eat the baby, and she hid him off in a cave somewhere for 1,260 days, something like that. So this could have maybe already happened. Who knows? All right, so like I said, we're going to go through a whole batch of different sources. And this is the Bible. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Again, kind of vague. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That sounds like they were having sex. The Spirit of God moved on the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now, that's where it's kind of interesting. Because only the sun gives off light. on its own accord. And Jesus spoke about that too. They said, if you ask him where you came from, what do you say? Say, tell him we came from the light. We are from the light. We're the children of the light. And this is where the light comes to being on its own accord. That's the only place it happens is the sun. Light just doesn't happen automatically, but the sun spits it out, yes, automatically. And that's because of the size of the sun scrubbing through the universe. So he said, this is where it gets kind of interesting. God said, let there be light, and there was light. Now, God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, which is the spin of the earth. And, well, actually, dipole electron flood theory, wow. Holy smokes. Whew, this is a shocker. This is my dipole electron flood theory. And all there is a dark and a light. That's all. This is the only two particles that exist. They make up everything as a dipole together. And that this is an electron. Two of them together make a photon. 1,823 of these together make a proton. And it changes chemistry, space, redshift, space and time, distances, all that stuff. But whoa, what a shocker. He divided the black and the white. And we did too. We can divide it as well. This is freaking me out. These are the two particles they can find, the smallest two particles that exist. And we found them in the light. The darkness and the light. And he separated the darkness from the light. We did too. The black came away from the white. You see it? That's what I thought I just heard. Let's go back and revisit that. I don't know what to say, but that's what it says. God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, the white from the black, just like I showed you we did too. It's supposed to be together, but it can be divided. No. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Now let's think about that. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Well, the reason you have light during the day is because you're being infiltrated with the white parts of those particles that I just showed you, which is the light. So he called the light coming down during the day. And at night, the light doesn't come down. The darkness, there is no light, well, to speak of. He called night. That all works. The evening and the morning were the first day. All right, as apparently the planet had to be rotating at that time as far as I'm concerned. All right, here's what's going on. They're talking about a firmament. And I agree with that, there is. It's called the ionosphere. And it is out here where we scrub the rest of the particles that are in space. And particles are light. So the light is streaming out of here like crazy. And we're scrubbing through that, creating a lot of heat out here. It's 2,700 degrees at the edge of our atmosphere. And you know, it's say 100-ish on the surface. 2,700 degrees out here. On the sun, it's 10,000 on the surface. It's millions out here because it's doing the same thing. Its particles are scrubbing, trying to get away from the sun, scrubbing through space. That's why we have this tremendous amount of heat here. And right below that, it's extremely cold because this is a dipole as well. And the more white you have here, which is the glowy part, the more dark you're going to have below, which is the cold part. All right, the black has it doesn't emit any heat. It's dark matter. The black part of the particles that I just showed you is dark matter. And that's in it's in everything, because everything is made out of the dipoles. the black and the white particles. And 1,823 of those together makes a proton. But every one of them is a little tiny magnet like that. You add them all together, at 1823, they become stable. Now, that's just the way nature works. So this is going to be called the firmament, right here. All right, and above it, it separates the waters from above from the waters from below. The waters above are nothing more than light. They turn into water as soon as they condense right below. Above it, they're just the same thing. They're water up here, but they're just not condensed. It's like a vapor, a mist. It's like a vapor canopy all around there, and as we scrub through it, our particles have to rip through that, and then when they get below it, they start to condense and into water. Above it is the water above, below is the water below. That's as simple as it gets. And here's what's being emitted from the sun. And of course, these are the two particles we're talking about, the darkness from the light. And here's what's being emitted from the sun, is all these particles. And it's out here, it's millions of degrees. On here, it's 10,000. Of course, this is a solar eclipse. That's the moon covering the sun. But you can see how intense it is. And you can tell that the sun is spinning it like that, because it's scrubbing here, here, and here. Much harder over here, it's trailing. So it's coming around and going this way, and everything appears to be moving that way. This is the poles of the sun. Anything that spins, that's magnetic or creates this magnetism in space, is going to have poles, just like we do, North and South Pole. And this is where it's spinning, and it's shooting out rays of literally particles. And this is the only place around here that light comes out on its own accord. Now let me just show you something about that. Now this is from the Gnostic text, Nag Hammadi. And all of these are sayings that Jesus said, and doubting Thomas, his scribe, wrote down and preserved. And this was the words he said out of his own mouth while he was alive and walking around on the earth. Now, number 50, Jesus said, if they say to you, where did you come from? Say to them, we came from the light. We came from the light. Now listen to this. The place where the light came into being on its own accord and established itself. On its own accord. That's the only place it happens from the sun. So where did you come from? We came from the light, which is where it comes out of the sun. The place where the light came into being on its own accord. That's the sun. And established itself. Now listen to this. And became manifest through their image. Manifest means to become seen, to become obvious, to be through their image. So the gods have an image of human people, I guess. Then if they say to you, is it you? Say, we are its children, the children of the light. We are the elect of the living Father. We have been given life.
All right, my turn leaving.
All right, so here it says, we are its children, children of the light. We are the elect of the living Father. If they ask you, what is the sign of your Father in you? Say to them, it is movement and repose. That's what light does. Light is movement and it's energy. Repose, light turns into that. That's made out of light. It's made out of the exact same thing that it makes light. Energy and repose. Movement and repose. Heat, all kinds of things. It's the same particles are doing all those different things, but they end up being solid objects. Everything is made of those two dipole particles I showed you. Dipole electron flood theory. That's the only two things that exist in the universe. That's only two. And it depends how you put them together, what they become. All right, so far I think I've accounted for most of the things in some manner or another. Now he said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and that's the light, is the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters. They're both the same particles. It's just one of them is condensed and one of them isn't. God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the compressed, condensed waters that are moisture, from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And those waters are the light. God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and that's condensation, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. All right? God called the dry land earth. Now, this is where it's tricky to come up with about that, because there's a whole batch of things about, like Ymir and Gaia and Tiamat, and there's a whole batch of stories about that. Now, where that dry land came from and all this stuff, I don't know. Is this sort of just giving you, it's sort of vague. And anyway, he called the dry land earth, and gathering together of the waters called the seas, and God saw that it was good. All right. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, herbs yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw it was good. All right, and the evening and the morning were the third day. Now, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Is that the stars? I would have to assume, stars or planets or whatever. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. That, it must be the stars. And let them be for lights in the firmament. When they say the firmament, I would have to go with that's the space. That's hard to understand what they're talking about here, to be honest with you. But God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. All right, so that's this, I got to be honest with you, this is kind of vague to me. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness, and God saw it was good. All right, now then he talks about creating everything on earth and multiplying and all that business. And everything would bring forth stuff of its own kind. And everything lived in harmony on earth, basically. Everything followed its own nature. Even though some of it was brutal, things would eat other animals and kill each other and tear them to shreds and everything, yes. But that was the nature of the beast. And we fall out of that nature. We have failed to be natural creatures anymore. Basically, I believe that's said somewhere. All right, this is about how everything goes from year to year. The plants and the trees and everything knows what to do, but not humans.
And all his works go on thus from year to year forever, and all the tasks which they accomplish for him. And their tasks change not, but according as God hath ordained, so is it done. And behold how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and change not their tasks. from his commandments. But ye have not been steadfast, nor done the commandments of the Lord. But ye have turned away and spoken proud and hard words with your impure mouths against his greatness. O ye hard-hearted, ye shall find no peace. Therefore shall ye execrate your days, and the years of your life shall perish, and the years of your destruction shall be multiplied in eternal execration, and ye shall find no mercy. In those days ye shall make your names an eternal execration unto all the righteous. And by you shall all who curse, curse, and all the sinners and godless shall imprecate by you.
Well, that doesn't sound good. I got to be honest with you. I am finding that this has a lot of validity to me. I know it sounds crazy. And this was Enoch. Now, he's the one who was talking about giants being 2.5 miles tall. These are the kind of things that lead me to believe that there's a lot of validity here. He's talking about things. They took it out of the Bible because it was just too much. And he's talking about the angels having sex with the daughters of men and having giants 3,000 ells tall. And there's no question that seems to be true. So what else can we take out of this? I don't know. All right, let me just talk about this here. This is Genesis 5:1 to 5:32, the genealogy of Adam. Now, so we get Adam and Eve, and then it comes Seth all the way down till we hit Noah. All right. Now, Noah, apparently, his father was Lamech, and the father of Lamech was Methuselah, who was the oldest living human. Now, Enoch was the father of Methuselah. So you got Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. Now, the Greek is a little different. All right, we started right off with Typhon, talking about the war of the giants and Typhon. Now, then comes Prometheus and Deucalion. Prometheus in the Greek, here we go, he is the father of Deucalion, who is Noah. So now it says, it goes through about Prometheus it created man. All right, here it is. Prometheus molded men out of water and earth, and gave them fire, which unknown to Zeus, he had hidden in a stalk of fennel. So he wanted to give fire to humans, and Zeus was very upset. And when Zeus learned of it, he ordered Hephaestus to nail his body to Mount Caucasus. So Prometheus is nailed to the mountain, which is in Cynthia Mountain. On it, Prometheus was nailed and kept bound for many years. Every day an eagle swooped in on him, devoured the lobes of his liver, and they grew back at night. And that was the penalty for Prometheus paid for the theft of fire. And finally Hercules afterwards released him, as we shall show in dealing with Hercules. Now this is the text from Apollodorus. Now we come down to Prometheus had a son, and he was Deucalion. That's Noah. He was reigning in the regions about Pythia. He married Pyrrha, the daughter of Hephaestus, and Pandora. Now listen to this. Pandora was the first woman fashioned by the gods, and she was a penalty, basically, for mankind. And when Zeus would destroy the men of the Bronze Age, Deucalion, by the advice of Prometheus, his father, constructed a chest. Having stored it with provisions, he embarked in it with Pyrrha, because the flood was coming. Zeus poured heavy rain from heaven, flooded the greater part of Greece, so that all men were destroyed except a few who fled to the high mountains in the neighborhood. Because more than just Noah survived, but this says they were destroyed as well. It was then that the mountains in Thessaly parted, and that all the world outside the Isthmus and Peloponnese was overwhelmed. But Deucalion, floating in a chest over the sea for 9 days and as many nights, drifted to Parnassus, and there, when the rain ceased, he landed and sacrificed to Zeus, which was the god of escape. And Zeus sent Hermes to him and allowed him to choose whatever he wanted. He'd choose whatever he wanted to get started again. And he chose to get more men. He wanted men. And at the bidding of Zeus, he took up stones, threw them over his head, and the stones which Deucalion threw became men, and the stones which Pyrrha threw became women. Hence people were called metaphorically a stone. Well, they are. Mudfossil proves it. And Deucalion had children by Pyrrha, first Helen, then whose father, some say, was Zeus. Zeus was getting around. And second, Amphiphaton, who reigned over Attica after Cranius, and third, a daughter, Protogony, who became the mother of Athalius by Zeus. And like I say, Zeus got around. Now, I think I'm going to close it up now for this right now. I'm getting a little burnt out, but what I tell you, there's just so much to this. And here you got married such and such, the son of Lucifer. There's so much to go through here. It's boggling my mind. I have to be perfectly honest with you. I'm sort of confused. But I think we could put it together if we spend enough time. That's all I can say. All right, I love you all, and I hope I haven't upset anybody or confused anybody terribly, more than I am. Because I want to get into Moses and what was his deal, and what about them being imprisoned in Egypt and the Exodus? How did that all happen? Velikovsky, I probably should get more into Velikovsky, because he's already done all this work. What the hell am I doing it for? Next time we do this, we're going to go through Velikovsky primarily, probably. Again, this is a work. It's a work in progress. I have no finished product here for you. So we're going to have to do this together if you want. It's up to you. All right? But I'll be doing several of these, at least, until I get what I feel is a handle on this. All right? So if you want to comment. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the comments. So if I don't do anything, comment or give you a heart or any of that stuff, it doesn't mean I didn't see it. I'm just overwhelmed. I got to be perfectly honest. So I'm going to get back to this. Anyway, I love you all. And they were in with Egypt. And there's so much to this. So much. All right, until next time.